ይህ አዲስ ቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት ነው። አዲስ ቅኝት መቀመጫውን ቶሮንቶ ካናዳ ያደረገ የሚዲያ አገልግሎት ነው። ዝግጅቶቻችንን በአዲስ ቅኝት ዌብሳይት www.addisperspective.com እና በአዲስ ቅኝት ዩቲዩብ ቻናል እንዲሁም ዘወትር እሁድ ከ4 እስከ 6 ፒኤም በአይሃርት ሬዲዮ በቀጥታ የሬዲዮ ስርጭት መሰናዷችንን እንድትከታተሉ እንጋብዛለን። አዲስ ቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት። Hello and welcome to New Perspective. Today we have a special guest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the weekend, hundreds of men, women and children from Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea and Sudan sailed from Libya across the Mediterranean in search of sanctuary in Italy. Tragically, their vessel sank and reportedly up to 400 people drowned in the Mediterranean.
The 2021 federal budget is on table and we had a brief conversation with Minister Ahmed Hussen, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Ahmed Hussen, before he became Families, Children and Social Development Minister, he served as a federal immigration minister. He was born and raised in Mogadishu, Somalia in 1976. After he immigrated to Canada, he studied law at the University of Ottawa and York University and became a politician. He has served as a member of Parliament for Toronto area, the riding of York South Weston, since 2015 federal election. Stay with us. የአዲስ ቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት ተከታታዮቻችን ዝግጅቶቻችንን ላይክ፣ ሼር፣ ኮሜንት፣ ሰብስክራይብ ስለምታደርጉን ከልብ እናመሰግናለን። አዲስ ቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት
Welcome once again to the New Perspective Media, and thank you for your willingness to answer some questions about budget 2021. But before that, I would like to ask you, as a person who came from East Africa, you know, there is a lot happening in that part of the world, and
yes.
Some community members in Toronto from the Ethiopian community are claiming that there is a genocide going on in Ethiopia, in the Oromo region, and there is a humanitarian crisis in Tigray, and there are a lot of problems on top of the COVID-19 pandemic. So how do you and your government follow this kind of situation? You know, is there any things that you did so far?
Yes, we follow the situation very closely. We've always emphasized that peace has to be restored in all parts of Ethiopia, that civilians must be protected. Canada has provided aid and relief to Ethiopian refugees inside Sudan, and we continue to call on all parties to allow humanitarian access into the civilian populations. At the end of the day, it's about protecting civilians, making sure that there's peace and stability for everyone, and making sure that that refugees are supported who have fled to Sudan.
Okay, so coming to our main discussion point today, that's budget 2021. And what makes this year's budget special?
Well, it's the first budget we've had since the pandemic started. So this is a major, very important budget. And budget 2021 has two main goals. One is to continue to support people throughout this pandemic. You know, Canadians are still dealing with the impacts of the pandemic. As you know, we're in the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have to continue to help people. We have to continue to help businesses and families and seniors and the nonprofit sector. So budget 2021 is about supporting people to get through this pandemic. So you will see measures such as extending the Canada Recovery Benefit, which is to help people who have lost their job because of COVID. It's extending to September the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit for people who have to stop working to take care of someone, their loved family member who has COVID. It is extending the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy that supports businesses to pay the wages for their workers, therefore enabling more Canadians to keep being employed and provide for their own families. We are extending the Canada Emergency Business Account. So all of those measures and other measures, health-related measures, the measures we're taking on the vaccine, all of those things are about protecting Canadians and supporting them now. We are also increasing payments under the old age security by 10% for seniors over the age of 75, starting next year. And before then, this year we'll be providing a $500 one-time payment. All of these measures are about investing in people, investing in communities. The second goal of the budget 2021 is about building now and investing now for a strong economic recovery, an economic recovery that is inclusive, that is green, that leaves no one behind. That is why you're seeing, for example, $5.7 billion invested in youth so that we can provide more jobs for youth. We can provide more support for youth who are studying by doubling the Canada Student Grant, for example. There is more money for skills training as part of that $5.7 billion investment for youth. As I said, building that capacity for young people to be able to take part in this strong economic recovery that we need them to be part of. There's additional money in our affordable housing strategy through the National Housing Strategy. The Rapid Housing Initiative, for example, is getting an additional $1.5 billion. This is a program that has been working really, really well on the ground. We also have more supports for women fleeing domestic violence, women and children, through the National Housing Co-Investment Fund. There is money that will be dedicated to acquiring commercial properties and turning them into residential properties. So that's very important to deal with the housing crisis. And we are also going to propose to implement a 1% tax on real estate owned by non-resident, non-Canadian people, and whose real estate is vacant or underused. So you'll have to pay 1% tax of the value of the house or the property for that year, so every year. And we will require these individuals to report to the government every year on the situation of their real estate holdings in Canada. So this is to, again, encourage those homes to be occupied by people, because homes are meant to be used. There's a lot of support for Black Canadians. $100 million more to the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative. This is the fund that supports the capacity building and capital projects for Black Canadian and African Canadian organizations. A $200 million endowment fund for African Canadians. This fund will enable its proceeds, once it's set up, to fund programs in the African Canadian community. It will fund charities and nonprofits for many, many years. More money, $51 million more for the Black Entrepreneurship Program. This is the program to support African Canadian businessmen and women to survive the COVID-19 pandemic and then to thrive after the pandemic.
What the statistics show that Black Canadians using this fund so far, Well,
no, we just started the fund, and it's the first time we're going to be releasing it is in May, the application process. Yeah. This money, this $51 million is additional dollars, but we were setting the program up. But in terms of the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative, that program has been used. We had 1 year of using it, and we know the demand. The demand is much higher than the amount of money we had. So the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative, before the budget, was a $25 million fund over 5 years. Yeah. But the demand was much higher. So that's why the government has listened the call from African Canadians to increase funding in that fund that supports, as I said, the building of capacity for community organizations and capital projects. So instead of having 25 million over 5 years, now we're getting another $100 million just for this year. So we will be able to fund more projects. The demand has been high, but we have also funded a lot of projects through that initiative. But now with this new additional money, we have the opportunity to fund and reach more projects. For the Black Entrepreneurship Program, that's a new program. It hasn't been used yet, but we're going to be opening it up for applications beginning in May.
So how do you implement this budget, this fund, in the already existing systemic problem, that reflected on the Black and marginalized communities? How do they don't know how to use these kinds of funding?
But that's why the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative. That's what it's about. It's about building that capacity. It's about helping these organizations in two ways: physically, with capital projects to improve the community centers and other community space. For example, there is a church in St. Catharines that used to be frequented by Harriet Tubman and all her colleagues, fighting against slavery and bringing enslaved people from the United States to freedom in Canada. That church was in bad need of repairs, and the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative, the capital section of that, has invested $100,000 to fix the capital project needs of that church. So that's an example of those investments that we've done this year. There's also the capacity building money, and that capacity building money is not just funding, but it's also helping by using intermediaries, larger Black Canadian organizations, to help the smaller organizations to increase their capacity to do the things that you were saying that they cannot do now. So that's actually the whole point of the fund. And now that fund has received an additional $100 million.
You are listening our conversation with Minister Ahmed Hussen, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. The minister had a Zoom meeting with the Ethiopian Canadian community members in the GTA a week before. Among the questions raised by the community members, here are the few. Stay with us.
The question is about accessibility and also equitable allocation of the funds that you've mentioned. I think these are significant in terms of being able to move the needle forward. So thank you.
My name is Mulu Galetu. I am living in Mississauga, and I am working with my community here in Mississauga and around GTA area. I am mentoring a high school student. It's by my initiative. I have a mentorship program, mentoring a high school student here in GTA area in my community. Is there anything to expand this initiative, mentoring program for the Black community, a high school student?
My question is, one of the shortage in our community, for example, is how to write proposals to access this funds. I think we must come up, like communities must come up with proposals. And do you have any fund?
So one of the things, as you know, racism and discrimination, has been really up in front and center in the past year. I mean, the past, but also in the past year. And there has been a lot of reports that came out with regards to access to support and funding for, to be able to work with targeting, identifying and addressing systemic racism and discrimination. I'm pleased. I know that with your own portfolio, you're on it, so I'm not too worried about that. But I think one of the things that I may make a suggestion is to, with your colleagues, how is the federal government is able to look at how funding is allocated across the board.
That's, as you know, the different Black communities from different parts of the world have different needs and different psychological and cultural background. How do you reconcile, because their needs are different? So,
of course. Very easy. We talk to all of them. We include everyone, and we make sure that the diversity of the Black Canadian community is reflected in the funding, in the application process, in the outreach, in the information dissemination, and so on. I mean, we'll continue that process.
If the Ethiopian community or the Somali community or the Jamaican community wants to use that funding,
they can use it.
Are they able to communicate with their own organizations?
So so within the Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative, there's two streams of funding, as I said.
Yes.
One is for capital projects, and the other one is for capacity building. For the capital projects, they apply directly to the government. For the capacity building, the smaller organizations have to go through one of the intermediary organizations. But remember, the intermediary organizations also answer to the government. So we have criteria and we have expectations. And of course, we're going to make sure that those intermediate organizations are reflecting when they fund and disperse the money and help the organizations, that they reflect the diversity of the community. By the way, it's not just those three. There's a larger organization that is helping them as well, called the NABC, the National Association for Black Canadians, headed by Emmanuel Meles. So he's very knowledgeable. He's an African Canadian. I don't know if you know Emmanuel, but he's part of that process. So I will, of course, I have ensured and I will continue to ensure that as we disperse that money to support African and Black Canadians, that the diversity is there.
Nice. As a Minister of Families and Youth, this year's budget, one of this year's budget component is childcare, and
yes.
So, what it looks like, the Black communities are using the childcare so far, and what's the data shows?
That's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. This is not just about childcare. It's about early learning. So it's early learning and childcare. And we're focused really on helping all parents. And of course, Black Canadians, African Canadians will also benefit from this initiative. It is a very significant investment, $30 billion over 5 years, and then $9.2 billion every year after that. So we're talking about the federal government coming in, putting significant dollars, not just now, but over the long term. And what is the $30 billion over the first 5 years going to do? Our goal is very ambitious. By the end of 2022, we want to bring childcare fees down by 50%, average of 50%. By 2025, 2026, we want to bring it down on average to $10 a day, childcare. That is significant. And it will put so much money back in the pockets of parents who are paying very high childcare fees right now. And it will also allow those who cannot pay right now, who are stuck being outside of the system, who are not able to access affordable childcare, to be able to access that childcare. And of course, African Canadian children will benefit from that. There's hundreds of thousands of Canadian children, including children from racialized backgrounds, who are in wait lists as we speak in different provinces. And so as we cut fees, we also need to increase the number of affordable childcare spaces. We need to increase the number of teachers, the early childhood educators. We need to make sure that there is accommodation in the system for children of all backgrounds, children with disabilities, racialized children, including Black Canadian children. So this is about building a system. But as part of building that system, our investments will also ensure that parents have significant savings in their childcare fees.
In the already existing system, and many moms from the racialized community or from the marginalized community have been suffering, to apply
absolutely
or to use this childcare. So, do you consider this area to make to improve it, or
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And we are very much determined this is the right thing to do. And by the way, now more than ever, early learning and childcare was always important, but now more than ever, it's needed even more so because of the pandemic. If we are to recover and have a strong economic recovery, we need to invest in affordable childcare. And that is something that many business entrepreneurs and heads of business associations and chambers of commerce have said. They've said that we need affordable childcare in this country in order to have a strong economic recovery.
The other thing is the COVID vaccination, and you are you are doing a lot of job in this area, but some communities are highly affected by this pandemic, and there is a need, a demand in
That's true.
vaccine or in any support. So how do you address this issue in the Black communities?
You're right. We need to make sure that our vaccine deployment, first of all, from our part as the government of Canada, we are delivering millions of vaccines every week to provinces and territories, and we'll continue to do that. In March, for example, our target was to deliver 6 million vaccine doses by the end of March. We ended up delivering 9.5 million. So we exceeded our target by 3.5 million doses. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to bring millions of doses to Canada, to provinces and territories. And we'll also, we have said very clearly, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that the federal government is available and ready to help, and has helped and will continue to help provinces and territories wherever there's challenges with respect to the delivery of the vaccines to Canadians. So this is work that's ongoing. We're very confident based on the delivery trajectory and the delivery timetable that every Canadian who wishes to be vaccinated will be vaccinated.
And there are some initiatives from the community, like for an Ethiopian community, the Physicians Association is trying to engage in the vaccine dissemination process. And but I don't think they started so far, but they are willing. So if there is any issue, any demand, your office will help or will engage in this?
I will definitely. I mean, it's the Minister of Health who's in charge of that. It's not my ministry, but I will certainly let her know that medical professionals from the Ethiopian Canadian community are ready to step up. And thank you for telling me. And of course, we will do everything that we can. And I want to thank them for their service. All the medical professionals, all the essential workers, the frontline workers from the Ethiopian Canadian community. I really want to thank them for their service, for keeping all of us safe, for helping the most vulnerable in the community, and keeping all of us safe at this very difficult time. So thank you.
Okay. Maybe the other thing is when it comes to the housing problem, the new Canadians, the refugee claimants and other Canadians, other newcomers are suffering from the housing problem, and most of the money they are making goes to the rent, or so. This is a serious problem. Yes. But what's the immediate solution for this as a family, and
Well, there isn't one single solution. I think the housing challenge is a spectrum, right? We have folks who are on the street, so we need rapid housing, and we're investing $1.5 billion more in the Rapid Housing Initiative to tackle the most severe housing needs of those who are on the street, those who are at risk of being homeless, and so on. Then we have deep affordable housing construction through the National Housing Co-Investment Fund. That fund is seeing more investments, also through the Rental Construction Financing Initiative. You spoke about high rents. One of the ways to tackle that is to build more supply. And through the Rental Construction Financing Initiative, we're doing exactly that. I know the need is great, but the federal government has been financing more and more and more projects. And then we also have the first-time homebuyer incentive to help those first-time homebuyers who need to access their dream of home ownership. So we're doing everything across the spectrum of housing need in Canada, and we'll continue to be ambitious. Our national housing strategy received more funding under this budget. It used to be a $40 billion program. Now it's a $72.5 billion program. So it shows you that we'll continue. We're putting $118 million in the Federal Community Housing Initiative, which is about supporting the co-ops and the nonprofits that are subsidizing rent for the most vulnerable members of our community. So this is about supporting the entire sector, and the government of Canada has been doing a lot in that regard.
Because of the pandemic, Minister, as you know, the domestic violence is very, very high.
Yes.
Even crimes and killings are happened even in the Ethiopian and Eritrean community. In Toronto, we covered it, in the first pandemic, but I don't see any engagement, any support to solve this problem once and for all. Do you think the budget address such social and psychological problems in any way?
Yes, and I have some good news for you. If you look at the budget in 2021, you will see a significant investment in a national strategy to tackle gender-based violence. $601 million has been allocated towards that. So this is something that will make a huge difference in the lives of people who are experiencing gender-based violence. In addition to that, the $1.5 billion that I spoke about in the Rapid Housing Initiative, 25% of that money has to be dedicated to women. There is money set aside in new funding for the Canada Housing Benefit, $315 million that is going to women and children fleeing domestic violence. There's also money set aside in the National Housing Co-Investment Fund to build more transitional housing, more shelters, and more supportive housing for women and children fleeing domestic violence. So that's just the beginning, but there's the $601 million will unveil a strategy that will really tackle this issue once and for all.
You are listening our conversation with Minister Ahmed Hussen, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Okay, that's I have for today. If you have anything to add, anything to...
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to thank you for your efforts. I know that you're informing the community about the latest news with respect to COVID-19 pandemic, as well as generally what the government has been doing and updates regarding the budget and prior to that. So I want to thank you for your service. And I want to thank all the essential workers, the medical professionals, and all the essential workers who are stepping up in the Ethiopian Canadian community to keep all of us safe, to help all members of the community. So I thank them for their service, for their hard work, and for their contributions. And I must say that Budget 2021 is really about supporting people. It's about investing in people, but also investing in communities, and dealing with the disproportionate impacts that COVID has had on women, on Black and African Canadians, and on particular groups. And if you look at the budget, you will see that has been taken into consideration.
Thank you very much, Minister Ahmed Hussen.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please write, comment, and subscribe our show at www.addisperspective.com. Goodbye.